Thank you.
Thank you. And such a nice morning, and seeing that there's quite a few of you here, hopefully Ruchita and I will be able to give you some good conversation, some good tips, and lots of questions is what we want to hear from you. All right, well, let's get started with this topic. First of all, this is a job that you get no training for. There is absolutely no pay, it's non-stop, and there is no exit package or there's no way you can exit. Yet, parenting is one of the most satisfying parts of people's lives, right? We hear this from people around the world. I read this really beautiful quote as I was prepping for this conversation. There is no such thing as a perfect parent, just try to be a real one. And this is by Sue Atkins. And Ruchita and I, who've both been mothers for a while now, my 21-year-old is here in the audience, Ruchita's younger son is here as well. We have been part of this sort of age-old parenting, right? We've been parents now for a couple of decades. Things have changed a lot in the last decade. The landscape of parenting has completely changed, right? We've got this challenge and experience that continues. How do you build values? How do you build trust in your children? But equally, there are enough and more platforms that are available. I mean, as fast as Gen AI comes out, we've got about, I think, 800 companies offering Gen AI right now. That many opportunities to have different conversations keep coming up. So what do we do when Gen Alpha starts talking about us and saying we're really sus or we're eat or whatever? We don't get it, right? We have to pull out our phones to understand what they're talking about us as well. Because sometimes that's also a mystery. What are they saying about us?
True.
In this situation, one thing we both agree on is there is no expert, right? There are no experts in parenting. We're all learning. We're all finding ways to make it happen. We're all failing sometimes, and then we're succeeding sometimes. So there's no medal, there's no glory, there's nothing that comes at the end of this job. I think what I wanted to really talk about is the roles as they are evolving at a faster pace. The fact remains that parenting continues to become tougher and tougher because our parental authority has gotten diluted, right? The way we used to look at our parents, Ruchita and I, is very different from how our children look at us, right? That whole idea of authority has changed because technology is giving them information on the spot immediately. Because technology is so confusing, let's talk to the first mom who embraced technology, and she embraced it quite a while ago.
Yeah.
Ruchita, let's start with a little bit about your community, right? You started the First Moms Club quite a while ago, and you became a voice for Indian mothers. Now you've authored a book. You've been running different communities, and you've got a lot of expertise here. Tell us a little bit about your journey and about this whole parenting landscape.
Okay. I'm going to be very quick about it because it seems like it was really long time ago. So I think to begin with, I was the first one among my friends to become a mom. The second time round, also I was still the only one having bachas, and the others were still not started on the journey. Facebook had just launched a feature called Groups, and I think that's was the time when the world was opening up, and the whole Facebook, Instagram was happening, and I think there were more nuclear setups. Moms were not living in their city, so they didn't have their parents, mothers, mother-in-laws to fall back on. So everybody was looking at the internet, and my friends were looking at me and say, okay, she's had 2 kids, she probably knows what she's doing. Honestly, that's not the case, because whatever worked the first time didn't work the second time, and I was challenged as a mother. So I truly started the group only for my close friends. Like, it was truly for 7, 8 of them who had kids after me, And I think I just started sharing things which were relatable for me, which I thought they would also relate to. And they just kind of grew organically, because if you remember back when we became moms in 2003, 2004, there used to be babycenter.com, which sent you an update every week, okay? And they would say that your kid's going to flip over or crawl and all. And for that week, if your kid didn't do that, you would be hyper, you would be stressed, because you're like, what is happening? Why is this not happening? And then wait for the next week, right? But now the world had changed. You just had to type in Google and you would get your answer. So honestly, that's how it started, because I realized that what we see in ads, what we see in media, were all the hunky-dory, happy mommy pictures. They were not talking about postpartum depression. They were not talking about your body looking different, mentally you feeling a certain way. And most importantly, what I realized was that especially Indian moms, I think they forget about themselves on this journey to motherhood, because your child is the ultimate prize, and you being a good mother is the prime focus then, and then you forget what you were as a woman. So I wanted this community to make you feel that you're not alone, you're not the only one who's going through it, because as much as you could be surrounded with so many people, you still feel very lonely during the early years of motherhood, and you feel you're the only one who's going through it, you know. So I just wanted them to have a online buddy, like an online mommy friend who made them believe that no, it happens to all of us. And yeah, that's how it started. So, and then it kind of grew, and we had Indian moms across 100 countries that were connecting, and I think the main rule was that nobody's an expert. We're all fumbling and finding our way through it. So it's okay to be okay. There's nothing like being a perfect mom, and just enjoy this journey. Yes, it's a roller coaster journey. It's crazy. I sometimes feel it's like a digital platform, right? As soon as you get the hang of Instagram, the algorithm changes and you have to adapt yourself. Parenting is a bit like that. You think, oh, it's all going hunky-dory, it's all smooth, and then something happens and you have to change your ways, right? So that's
New
how
challenges.
new
So
challenges.
many things you said that are so important. I think the one that I want to really call out is you're not alone, right? If anyone thinks you're alone, exactly like Ruchita said, right? We used to wait for this weekly baby center. All of people who were around and became parents in that decade were waiting for that newsletter. But today you have access to so much information, right? There's this information overload, and there are communities, and there's so much complexity and confusion that happens for the parents. And the kids are facing that too. They're also finding too much time with technology, too many different things happening. We'll come back to technology in just a moment. Tell me then, Ruchita, how did you then culminate from this community to the book? Tell me a little bit about that, and what brought out these stories? What was the significant element in this book that you wanted to make sure happened?
I think it I think came about in the COVID time, because I think all of us were reflecting on many things, right? It gave us time to pause. And over the years, as I was running the community, every time I would see a lovely story, I would like, oh my God, this needs to be stored, and this needs, savored later. Like, but the thing is, every time new 10 stories come, the 13th story goes dead, right? And I'm like, this is so beautiful. And honestly, I think I'm just thankful to the mothers, because they trusted our platform to share their deepest, darkest secret, and it was not just funny moments. It was also, say, a mom who was dealing with a child who had autism, to somebody else who had special needs, to even someone who was coming out of a marriage because of domestic abuse. So, I felt very honored, because they were feeling so comfortable and free to share it, and I thought that this would inspire so many other moms to do the same and to relate. So, and the world was changing, Sunita. This was from 2010 to now. This was more about influencer marketing, more about mommy influencers. And while as much as I think that we need communities more now, people follow individual versus collaborating. And I realized that if this had to culminate, if FMC had to culminate, then the book would be a brilliant idea. I think I'm old school. I think a book is more permanent than a social media platform. And I think my team and me, I think we just got some purpose. Like, we had a purpose to work towards this book during those really dark times, And I just thought that we have such amazing stories. They need to, get out to the world. So we have over 100 moms who've written, and they are from all over India, the world, everywhere. And they generously shared their stories, So I'm forever grateful for that. And I don't know whether I have a mother here who's sitting, and she once wrote to me and said, I want to write for Khichchdi for the Desi moms part 2. Vandana.
Let's have a round of applause.
So, Vandana said, when are you writing Khichchdi for the Desi moms sold 2? I want to send a story. And I was like, okay, wait, hold on. It takes time to get the book going. But, that's the kind of trust and love we got. And I was like, this has to be a book. And you've read part of the book. So, it's a easy read.
It was, I had tears. I was laughing. Yeah. I was overwhelmed. I was surprised by how much we share, and yet it's so different, right? We have our own journey, but we actually go through so many similar experiences. So, looks like there's a part 2 coming out soon.
I hope so, yeah.
Yeah. But, as we talk about sort of these journeys, and as we learn from them, and this shared learning is so powerful, right? Versus all of us thinking, I'm by myself, I have to grit through this, I have to be very resilient, because yes, there are challenges with parenting, right? As the child goes through different experiences as they're growing up, we find we have to struggle and find the solution in ourselves. Tell me, what are some rituals or practices that you feel, for strengthening this parent-child relationship are really important? Whether it's from the book, whether it's from your own parenting journey, what is it that always stays? What is it that always stays important and is valid? We were parented by people from the previous millennium. Now we are parenting now. What's going to stay and what's going to go away?
So, I think every generation feels, I'm sure my mom's in the audience and she probably felt like I had it easier as a mother, and I look at my young nieces who are mothers now and I say, oh my God, they have it so much easier. And that's always, I think that's evolution. And, every generation, oh my God, back in the time we did it without maids, and these girls are cribbing with maids and stuff like that. So I think that's a given. I mean, that's not going to change. But I think it's also tougher. So when my mom was bringing me up, or even when we were bringing up our kids in 2004, we didn't have to think about AI. We didn't have to think of online bullying. We didn't have to think of troll or body shaming or any of those things. So while, yes, they might have maids who are going with them on fancy holidays, but they also have to worry about, you and I told our kids, do not talk to strangers, and about good touch, bad touch, safe touch. Now we have to doubly tell them about in the real world as well as the virtual world. So it's not really getting it easier, right? But I think there are some things that never change, which is, I think, one thing I always say is that you have to keep communicating with your child, and it has to be both ways. It's not just about you asking your child, how was your day, blah, blah. You're always like asking them and they have to answer, and as they grow up into teenagers, they're not interested.
You can't
in
answer
answering,
conversation, right? There's like a time zone when you can't speak to them.
I
Right?
have
First
my
thing in the
teenager
morning,
also here who's like
do not
not going to
speak.
talk to
The
me.
no touch zone goes on for about
They
2
set their
weeks.
boundaries very this, right? But I think you also have to share. So if you had a bad day at work, I think it's important to go back and share that, so they can feel comfortable about sharing. If you had a loss, if you felt sad, or I think it's important to share that and not always show them that you're this perfect person on a pedestal, because I think that's the wrong. You're human, and more than anything else, I think children always watch you more than hear you. So practice what you preach, I would say. So live that life so that the kids also follow it automatically. You don't have to say, keep your phone down and stuff like that. I think I was very lucky because I was running the community as my children were growing up, and my online and offline world was very meshed and very merged in that way. So sometimes I would actually ask them for tips and, oh, should I share this story? Should I do that? I also realized the importance of consent while running the community, because something funny would happen with us and I said, oh, I have to share it with my community because it's a funny story and other mothers would relate. Until my older one turned around and said, you didn't ask for my permission, when he became a teenager. And I was like, oops, there's consent, right? I need to. So then I started asking them that, okay, this is a funny story and can I share it? And they would be, okay. So I'd call them Bada Brateshwar and Chota Brateshwar in my stories.
Yeah.
And then if something would happen, and then they would look at each other and say, oh God, this is going to become a Brateshwar story. So they knew that,
you became predictable.
Yeah, I became very predictable, which was fine. But I would make sure, like, oh, don't share this photograph or don't do that.
Yeah.
So I was then careful as things started changing on the online world, because I realized that it's not as safe. And we were so new to it, right? Like we were migrating into this world. They were natives, so they get it. And they were like, please don't do this. And so I'm happy to always learn more from them, because we've got to realize that they do know more than you. Because they have information on their fingertip.
Every second.
We were scared of our parents. I'm going to be 50 in 2 years and I'm still scared of my mom who's sitting here in the audience.
I'm scared of my daughter who's sitting in the audience.
But because our parents knew more than us. But now that's not the case. They definitely, and please, they do know more than us. So let's not pretend that, we know more than them. So yeah.
The processors work far better.
Yeah, far better. They get it.
I love what you said about always having the channels of communication open. I think that's so important, and we find that we have to exert our authority, and that authority is coming from more experience, more travel. We are earning the money, so we are paying for the phones or whatever. But the reality is that, what do we learn from? Like, for example, I still haven't learned how to use Snapchat. I don't think I'm going to learn in this lifetime. I've given up on it. But Instagram is fine, and all of the things that sort of make life easier, which have become day to day, we usually learn with the
also,
kids, right?
communication in their way, right? So, like now I have an Instagram group with both my boys. So I'm not only communicating them one-on-one, but or through, a WhatsApp, but I'm also communicating on. So you have to change the way you communicate, right? So because they understand reels, and so I'm sharing. I think,
The
relevant reels.
messages you want to land. through
Yes, through those reels. Of course, they might say I'm a boomer to share certain reels.
All the time.
But sometimes when I'm confused, I send the reel and say, is that true? And then they kind of. So I think it's important how you communicate with them. You got to realize you can't afford to be fuddy-duddy and be irrelevant.
Can't be
you know.
precious about the way you want to do things, right?
no,
Can't
yeah,
exert
yeah,
authority.
yeah.
It's interesting you're talking about reels. My daughter has been sending me reels since about a decade now, every day, because her ultimate dream is that one day she'll open the door and there'll be a box and there'll be a puppy inside. Right? No puppy has showed up, but the reels show up every day. That's called resilience and persistence. And I wanted to talk about that because it's really, really important. I have taken her consent to talk about this, but resilience is something that we want to build in kids,
True,
right?
true.
But in today's day and age, there's this delicate balance, right? We're Indians and we want to have this Indian parenting, which is sort of directional and a little bit more values led. But the modern demands are where, you've got to be able to flex, right? They're going into the global world. They're going to university, they're going to schools, they're going to colleges where they are meeting people from different backgrounds. I think the thing we always try to sort of put together, or we try to make sure our children get from us, is this emotional intelligence, right? The ability to understand how to deal with others. And that gets so accelerated when they're in different environments. Any thoughts you have on this? Anything you've experienced where your kids have experienced something unusual and you felt a little out of depth and you've had to sort of, learn how to cope with it. I'm constantly Googling and asking AI how to do things, right? Do you have to do that?
I think all of us have to do. I always say that, at least the previous generation, like your parents, my parents, they're happy not being woke. Our children are born woke. We are like pretending to be woke, okay? We're just trying to get the hang of it. Yeah, wanna be woke, and then you don't want to say politically incorrect things and all. And it's a constant challenge. But I think I will again just go back to keep talking to them, keep doing things because they're watching you more than listening to you. Keep being open and, actually being okay with learning things from them, and also acknowledging that, like letting your children know that I appreciate this in you, or I appreciate, X, Y thing, because the world has changed today. So I know it's tough. It's tough. It's not going to get easier because I think constantly keep reading. You can't afford to be a dinosaur and so I don't understand this and I don't. At least get an idea of what it is because that's your child's world now,
So fake it till you make it.
Yes, totally. Fake
Smile
it
till you can get the information.
Say yes, I know, and then Google it and say, yeah, what was it? Or even if they used a term like sus and riz, and you're like, oh yeah, he's riz, and then go and say, what is riz? So that's all you have to do.
And with each generation, the language is changing. Right? I kind of looked at Gen Alpha lingo, right? So skibbity, mewing, sus, busset, Ohio. I don't even think kids who are 5 years older than that understand it. And I'm looking at this and thinking, like, how are we going to have a conversation as we go forward if everything they say sounds alien? So it's like a new language.
It's a new language.
But it's a new language that changes every week. So what do we do?
When we were growing up, we had the P language. Yeah. This is their P language.
Yes. But it changes every day.
It changes
P, X, Y, Z, everything changes, right? I think one of the things I also wanted to talk about is about building resilience, right? We've heard this whole concept, tiger moms, and we're very quick to judge parents that want their kids to succeed. They don't want kids to fail. They don't want them to have the same journey that they had. And we're often transmitting our need for ambition, what we want out of life, to our kids. But I want to talk a little bit about this whole idea about how do you help your child build resilience? Because in today's ever-changing world, first of all, we are investing in building our children's trust. They need to trust us. They need to be able to share and confide. You talked earlier about sharing our vulnerabilities, but if we're not listening to theirs, we're missing it. And the reality is today, mental health is deteriorating so fast for all the kids out there. You need someone that you can reach out to. Every child who's here in this room, if you don't have at least 3 adults that you can speak to, please make it a point to talk to your parents and find out who are those elders beyond your parents that you can confide in, that you can reach out to for help. But going back to the question I have, right? Building resilience is important. How do we balance protecting the kids? This whole tiger mom, get them going, these labels which are social. And how do we balance that with teaching them how to go out and face challenges? Like very often we become their momagers and, so many titles that have come out. But how do you give them enough support but yet enough?
I think we all are trying, right? Honestly, when we were growing up, we didn't have as much as they had. So we have this hunger to prove ourselves. they are a privileged lot. They don't have the hunger, but they'll have other issues. They'll have AI issues. They'll have the climate change. They'll have noise pollution. They'll have all these other things, right? So I think it's not like, so they won't be challenged like how we were challenged, but their challenges are going to be different. Right? So let's not think that they are that privileged, because they will grow up into a very different world, because we were brought up in a different world by another generation, and this is a different world. And again, I think it just comes down to they watch us. I think they've watched, at least I can say from personal this, they've watched my husband start a startup from zero, do well with it and move on, and things like that. They watched me how I worked on FMC and stuff like that. I'm kind of in the process of reinventing myself, so they're watching me do that. So I think it really comes down to watching your parents. I get inspired by my mother, because even today she's a doctor. She doesn't want to slow down. She wants to go back to her clinic work. So I think it's just watching the parents. So you have to become like an example. And let me be honest, as much as we would think we are great parents, we will give some dysfunctionality to our children.
Of course.
Let's accept that. As much as we think we are great and whatever, because all of us, and I've spoken to young moms, and all of us want to bring up well-balanced, happy children who can fight their own battles and stuff like that. And we've all been all these moms. Nobody's just a tiger mom. We've all been a tiger mom at some point, a helicopter mom at some point, a submarine mom. I mean, there are many terms now. So at different ages and stages, we've all been, we are like a combination of these moms. Nobody's a very chill mom. Everyone goes through their thing. So I think it's fine. And at the end of the day, whatever happens, where the kid might do whatever, when a stranger or a person who you don't know comes and says, "Oh, what a lovely child you have, what a that's the only thing you need to know." That's the only compliment you're interested in. Where a guard will come and say, "Aapka beta bahut acha hai," that's all you want. When, like, I would say that sometimes he might be a brat at home, but if he's behaving outside, you're like, medal mil gaya.
That's exactly right. The first time you go to your parent-child meeting in school, you think like, are you talking about my child? Like, seriously, this is the same child that lives at home with me. But then it fills your heart, right? You hear from someone that was vulnerable, that needed help, that needed guidance, and your child was there for them, and that's it.
I think also the other thing, while we're of course talking about moms, we should not forget about dads, because this generation, I think, is far more involved, and I think mothers should definitely get fathers to do more, because they're not learned to do it. So please delegate, become the CEO and delegate.
Become the CEO of the family, right?
Correct.
So make sure there's the chief financial officer, but then make sure that there's someone who's doing operations.
Correct.
What we need is a COO.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I think, Ruchita, so many beautiful pieces that that you've shared. The reality is that we all play these different roles, but it's about being able to listen to the child's vulnerabilities with an open mind, right?
Yeah.
I think, unfortunately, in this day and age, when we share what's going on with us, we think we are being vulnerable. When the kids share, we start saying, when they say these are my boundaries, we say they're woke. And I think that we have to find that balance in between. We say that they're very entitled. I've had these conversations with all of my friends, right? When kids of our generation, our kids, say that, it's not okay, don't talk to me first thing in the morning. We'll be like, you're setting boundaries, but you're living in my home, what's going on here? We need to find that balance of not judging them. And as much as we believe that our intent is good and our behavior may be whatever, we need to be sure that we also know what their intent is, right? That I think is something that stands out.
And who's giving them the entitlement? We are only doing that. So
ultimately, right?
So please actually be very conscious and aware of how your parenting is. And it's okay to goof up and then, get up again and say, okay, no, let me do it better, And it's a constant, like I said, it's a constant journey, and you have to keep learning. So it's nobody, that's why I get very scared of parenting experts, because, only you can parent your child, because a child is very unique, and we both have 2 children, and that both those children come out of the same body, but can be completely different, right? So,
exactly. And there's so many influencers, right? There's so many people on social media having perfect lives, but what's beautiful is seeing the imperfections. When you see people struggling, when you see them failing, and when you learn from that, I think that's the most powerful, most powerful way to be.
True.
I want to, now that we've talked about the internet and we've talked about Instagram and we've talked about influencers, let's talk a little bit about this digital age parenting and who is raising whom in the digital age, right? We talked already about the fact that the kids know a lot more, but we're always negotiating, right? For younger kids, for example, any restaurant you go to, if there's a younger child, there is a screen, The child is seated, the parents are struggling. I actually remember once my husband and I were at a restaurant. We were sitting, there was a glass and there was a couple inside with a small child, and we were sitting outside. And now, of course, our kids are teenagers and older. But we were watching what's going on, right? The mother's holding the child, taking the child to the toilet. The father's trying to eat. Then they're, passing the kid to each other. Then there's a screen. That's the only way they can get past it. You're watching and you're thinking, this is theatre going on. This was me, 10, 15 years ago. And you're thinking, okay, my God, it's so hard. Why don't they just stay home? Why are they at the restaurant? That was one of the first things we said to each other. That's hindsight, right? You're looking at it from the future. But when you're in it, what do, right? When your child needs some stimulation, because there's stimulation all around. Equally, that whole idea, balancing career. All of us who need to go out there and do work and, have jobs, travel, do the things we need to do to feel mentally stimulated, we are making choices every day. And these choices are really difficult, right? Letting our children have access to technology. I remember in the past, people used to say, when do you give your child a phone? 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15.
But it changes, right? So my older one was the last guy in his class to get a phone, and when he was in his 10th, he was like, everybody has, and my younger one got it way earlier because COVID happened. So, you have to adapt. I could not follow the same rules. And of course, my older one's like, you're always very lenient with the chotu, but that's how it is, So
the compare and all.
But the world had changed. In 4 years, the world had changed. So I had to adapt to the world, right? So,
now it's changing in 4 months.
Yeah, but I think in the digital world, while you can't do away with the phone, so I don't believe that, I will bring up my child without digital and TV. It's not possible. Let's be practical, right? But I think there have to be some rules. There have to be rules about not taking it to a restaurant. Dinner time has to be digital free, and those are your own traditions and your own rules because you can't use it as a nanny when that kid was 2, and then crib when he's 13 and not leaving his phone, right? So you have to also set those rules and start disciplining from day one, so that it's natural and it's not like extra discipline.
And use technology for shared experiences as well, right? I mean, just like this. Sharing reels on Instagram is one thing. You want to share something that's perhaps serious news, but you can't give it any other way to your child. So you share an alert or you share a message around safety, for example, right?
Yeah.
We talked earlier a little bit about the children facing things like cyberbullying or coming across strangers or, sharing information that they shouldn't on the internet. What do, right? I mean, this is...
Yeah, you have to keep talking.
Part of the system, right?
Yeah, you have to keep talking, and I think the talk also has to change as they grow up, right? Like, because you can't give that much information when they're 5 and 6, but as they keep growing, you keep talking and you have to constantly visit. It's like if you were to do a fire drill in a building, you
keep doing the same thing.
Keep doing the same thing. I mean, it might bore them, and they're like, it's like getting into a plane and listening to those safety rules.
Yeah, it's a bit like that whole concentric circles, right? You first give some messages, then you keep increasing,
but you have to do that. You have to, and then actually sometimes ask them also, right? Like I said, they're woke, we aren't. So ask them.
Yeah.
what's not appropriate.
They're woke, we aren't. Let's ask them. Fair enough. I'm sure many of you don't agree that we are not woke, but that's that. One last segment I want to talk about is, as parents, we need to look for support, right? And we think that technology gives us some degree of support, but sometimes we get very astray by what we see online, right? The perfect world, these famous people, their babies are managed. It's looking like it's just an easy piece to do. In fact, I have a colleague who's constantly asking me, do you think it's a good idea to become a parent? Is it something that you should do? And we're seeing a lot of young people choosing to be, I'm not even going to say dinks because it's so old-fashioned, but that's it, right? So many people make these choices. What's going to happen next, right? What's coming? I mean, online is changing the way we communicate and we learn. But how can we leverage it for some positive outcomes? Because the fear and the sort of, the keeping up with the Joneses, the fear that you have, it keeps on increasing. So postpartum is increasing. There's so many other things that are going on that make it so hard. People are panicked because they can't get the amount of likes they like and all of that. What's next, Ruchita, in terms of using online to support your parenting journey? Any ideas?
I think we'll have to use far more filters, and by that I don't mean looking pretty and beautiful. I mean, like, filter the people you follow, because honestly, I don't know whether the human being is ready to take this much information. Were we supposed to know so much that was happening in the world, right? Like, we're getting to know.
Is our brain able to absorb it?
I don't think our brain is able to absorb it. I don't think we are ready, So the thing is, you'll have to cut down on the people you follow, and it's okay to not be trendy about many things, and even like that, I don't know, when in the middle there was this whole right brain development and the kids are sent from a very early age, honestly, there is a reason why there's a right and a brain. Logic and creativity both need to work together. So the research has shown that it's not like just because you activate the right brain, it will be smarter. No, they both work together, and that's how it. So read up a little more and actually understand that, do you really need to do that just because 5 of your other friends are doing it? Try to find your tribe. I think that's what the moms on FMC did. And even if they're smaller tribes, I think that's important. As much as there are more influencers, I think it's important to find a little small group that are people like you and me, and just keep it small and have faith in that. And also agree to disagree on many things, not try to be, I think, the perfect mom more than anything else, because that is something that all of us are trying to achieve and nobody can get there, right? So this whole perfect mom bit should be just forgotten. Get the dads involved again. More of the dads involved. Send them for PTMs, send them for different things where you don't want to be. Don't try to do everything, and choose your tribe. I mean, that's the only thing. And it's okay if you've missed out on a couple of classes and all. That's fine. I mean, be happy with.
I think that's another one, right?
Yeah.
We work so hard in our careers as women. Often we tend to sort of feel like we have to make these choices because the social narrative is that you have to be at every game, at every sport.
Because of guilt, right? I mean, I remember Ariana Huffington saying that as soon as the child comes out, the guilt gets in.
Yeah.
So, mothers always have that. I don't think you can do away with it, but you can kind of control it. I feel like if you can't do with it,
and
away with it.
that whole idea of competition continues, right? That one's child did this, they reached there, that one came first. I love Brené Brown's quote where she says, parenting is about raising and celebrating the child you have, not the child you thought you have. I think that's also really
and also accepting the parent you are and not that
not the parent you should be
or you thought you would be.
The kids are watching you and that's what you end up with. Parentification is a reality, right? Kids become far older much faster now because parents are, maybe there are some parents that don't have the time or energy, they're out there earning, they don't have the time to spend with sort of doing the parenting that they would like to have. But today we're also seeing kids caring for their parents. So most recently I traveled with my daughter and we were at the airport and I hadn't been well, I had chikungunya and I was feeling really lost. And she took charge completely, right? She took the passports, went through immigration, visas, tickets, everything. This reverse parenting, is it bringing the values from generation to generation? What do you think? Is it that these are stories that are good stories? Should we continue to share
I think
them?
they are very good because, like I said, there's no harm in saying I don't know this. I mean, if I'm stuck with my phone or my laptop, I'm very happy to tell my older one, I don't get it, please make me understand. Or if my mom is stuck with her phone, I get my younger one to help the mom because I feel he understands best.
Exactly.
So, that's their way of bonding. And I think, honestly, there's no harm. I think it's great because, they also feel very important and it's okay to say I don't know, right? I mean, what's the point?
Cherish and value.
Yeah, I think that's a great way of,
Wonderful.
bonding.
I think today parenting is harder. Ruchita, these were such great thoughts. We have to worry about climate, pollution. We have to worry about what's happening online. We want to make sure we are raising balanced individuals who have empathy. We want them to be independent, yet we want them to listen to us. We've got just so many different pieces, right? This other line I read from Neil Portman, who says, children are the living messages we send to a time we will not see. I think it's really, really important as parents to nurture our children for who they are and what they are. It was wonderful hearing your anecdotes, your stories, your experience, and I really felt like what we've done, Ruchita, is just share this journey of life that we've been through. So thank you all for listening. It's just these different examples. Talk to someone, right? If you're a youngster here, find someone that you can speak to if you're feeling pressured or uncomfortable. If you're a parent, find your tribe and find someone that you can relate to and then trust them. If you're asking for their advice, trust them. That's what I wanted to share with all of you. Thanks, Ruchita. We'll take questions now. We have about 5 minutes for questions. So any of you who have questions, please put your hand up. Make it brief, make it a question, please. No comments. We've got lots of comments that are going on. And just let us know what you want to hear from Ruchita. Thanks.
Good morning. Excellent ideas and thoughts. It's always nice to learn new things. I wanted you to highlight that with the resilience, entitlement, there is a big question of ego, drugs, and genders. which is coming very rapidly to this new generation. Any thoughts?
Ruchita, any thoughts on that? I can go after that. No.
I think again we have to upgrade ourselves, right? So I think we have to just keep practicing what we preach, and also I think give them the comfort. At least that's what I feel I've done with my children. That over the last years, as soon as they became teenagers, I was not a parent but more of a friend. And I feel like if there is something that goes wrong, if they want to confide, they will come to me. And also make peace with the fact that there will be some things that they will hide from me, and it's fine. You know, we see right now, I mean, growing up, even I hid from my mom, right? But today I know my child is hiding because I follow him on Facebook, on Instagram, but he's hiding his stories from me. So that's a scary thing because my mother didn't know what I was hiding from her, but I know my child is hiding the stories, right? And he has a Finstagram account, which is a fake Instagram account, and I don't know what's happening in that life. So just kind of make peace with that and move on. I think that's all.
And the letters have juggled around, right? Parenting has now become partnering. Because you're actually partnering with the kids.
Correct.
There's nothing we can do. I do believe that when you're saying things like drugs, gender, yes, gender identity, there's just so much that's revealing itself. It's not like it wasn't there before. It's just that we're hearing it now, right? We are creating spaces where people feel safe. We build that psychological safety for our kids so they can share what's going on.
And there's a vocabulary that they have which we didn't have actually.
We didn't have, exactly. And I think we need to embrace it. If we don't learn it, we're going to miss the bus.
Yeah.
We had one more back there. Yes, please go ahead.
Hi. Thank you for the wonderful session. It feels really nice to even hear all these things. My question is, I have a 7-year-old and she's suffering from a skin condition which takes maybe years to heal. Doctor has informed it may take around, when she's 12 years old, it will go. We both are working. It's quite hectic work for us, so it becomes very difficult to manage with all the requirements. And initially she was also okay with medicines and everything, but now she is also going through a phase where like, I'm tired of all these things. So in this situation, can you advise if something can be done to create a bond and deal with it on a long-term basis?
Yeah, I hear you, and actually the first thing that I thought of, you said she's suffering from. I think you should say she's living with, right? Because that automatically reframes it, right? Because she has to live with it. There's no doubt. The minute you rephrase it in your head, perhaps you won't think of it as suffering, because the minute we say something is suffering, then that continues. But for me, I would do, the things I would do is I would just give a lot of comfort in believing that I understand. Showing empathy is so important. We want children to have empathy. We want them to be emotionally intelligent. Giving them that empathy and saying, I understand you're going through a hard time. Giving her that opportunity to just speak about what's going on. I think that can really, really help. Building that bond, building that trust, giving her the belief that you're available, and while you can't do anything about it, you know that she's going through it, right? So just being that partner a little bit.
I don't know how it is, and it must be really tough, and I've only seen stories like this being shared on our community and of course in the book. But I think what's, like she said, to be there always, and I think also, since you have the doctor saying, and we are no experts, that it will go away because some of these things are childhood, eczemas and stuff like that, which kids outgrow. And you can probably say that he's a boy, going to be stronger. That's going to be her superpower, because she's gone through so much, that'll give her more, strength as she grows up. So, you can only, because it's a thing to wait, and you have to be patient, and I'm sure it's not easy. I've seen my nephew go through something like that, but also divert them into something else. Like he became a great sportsman, find a hobby or something that she's good at it, and encourage that, and
sometimes art or
let not this be the focus, of always. You have to,
Thank you all so much. I know we have some more questions. We'll take them outside. We do have to wind up. I think the last message I want to make sure we share with you is the only way to keep parenting, whatever age it is build those safe spaces for your children so that they can come, they can share. If she's sharing her frustration, that's great. Building these safe spaces, empowering them to be the individuals that they are. And remember, they're always learning from what you're doing and not so much from what you're saying. I know you had a question. We'll take it from you outside. But thank you all so much. And thank you, Ruchita, for writing this beautiful book and making it possible.